Welcome to another episode of Drones Down Under podcast. And tonight we've got our special guest, Amanda Meys from CSIRO. So I'm going to go through her bio in a minute. How are we doing, lads, tonight?
Very well. Very well. Very excited.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to talking to Amanda, but give us a couple more minutes, Amanda. Let me go through the bio for everyone. So Amanda's been in the aviation industry for over 20 years. Started as an avionics technician in the Australian Army working on Blackhawks. When Amanda left the Army, she moved to the safety side of aviation and held the role of Aviation Safety Officer for the RAF Test and Evaluation Directorate. In 2018, Amanda joined the CSIRO and is currently their Chief Remote Pilot. CSIRO uses drones over a wide range of activities and research projects right across Australia. So awesome bio, and I'm sure we're going to go in through that over the next hour or so. So welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. It's awesome to join you guys. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
Hopefully say the same thing at the end of the podcast. So let's start it with, obviously, you got quite a long career with the Army. Perhaps we start there and get a bit of an overview of your experience in the Army.
Yeah, well, I'll go back one step further. I think I inherited a love of aircraft from my grandfather. Awesome. He was an aircraft technician, and ever since I could probably walk and follow him around, I've just loved aircraft. So going through school, I did all the science stuff that I needed to do, and I got sold on joining the military to do my trade. One, because they pay for it. Two, you get to work on quite exciting aircraft if you're in the military. So I don't really know why I decided the Army, but helicopters appealed to me. And they sold me on showing me a whole bunch of videos on Blackhawks and Chinooks flying around. And I just said, sign me up.
I don't think anyone's going to say no to that, hey?
Yeah. So I joined the Army pretty much as soon as I could. Obviously did all their recruit training and stuff, and then went off and did the trade course to become an avionics technician.
What sort of time frame was that, Amanda?
So that would have been in the mid 90s.
Okay.
So when I was young and bulletproof and 18 years old, I thought, what could go wrong? I'll join the Army. It was actually probably the best decision of my life because it sent me. That was like the kickstart into the aviation industry. So that was very good. Spent well over 11 years in the Army, predominantly working on Blackhawks. I did manage to get a few months working on Chinooks as a fill-in, and they're just like an impressive beast of a helicopter. Is the only way to describe them. So yeah, I absolutely love my time in the Army. Had an awesome sort of career. Solidified my love of aviation in general. And I know we're on a drones podcast, and I keep talking about real aircraft, but that's sort of where I started, and that's where the passion came in. And I think the natural progression to drones is a lot of people might disagree, but I still look at it as a cog in the aviation industry.
Definitely. And we're very big on advocating for safety. So I think it's really good that you actually started on that, because that'll obviously make the relevance when we're talking about drones later on. What was the role when you're working on Blackhawks and Chinooks? What type of things were you doing?
So as an avionics technician, you do all of the maintenance on all of the radio, radar, and electrical systems right throughout the aircraft. So it's quite varied. It's quite geeky, which sort of suited me quite well. I think I'm a bit of a geek anyway, and it it's a lot cleaner than working on the engines and being an aircraft technician with oil and everything rolling around. So it's quite varied. You get to turn up to work and you don't really know what you're going to fix. And I think being able to fix it and send it back out flying was the ultimate satisfaction of going. You had an aircraft on the ground, you managed to fix it, and it's back out flying. So that's sort of it in a nutshell, without going into too much detail.
Impressive skill. Not everyone has the skill to go out there and get a downed aircraft and get it back in the air. So it's definitely a big feather.
True. It's easy when you know what you're doing. It sounds impressive. It's like a lot of things. People go, "Oh wow, like you worked on them," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I spent years training to do it. So if I can't apply the training, well, get another job, really."
So 11 years on fixing helicopters.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I loved every minute of it until you get a little bit older, and then I thought, when I hit 40, do I really want to be thinking ahead? When I hit 40, do I really want to be crawling around on my knees in the dirt, out in the 40-degree heat, fixing aircraft? So I wanted to stay in the aviation industry, and that's where I went across and sort of looked at the safety side of things. I ended up working when I first got out of the Army, I ended up working for the Air Force Research and Development Unit, and it was like a childhood dream. I ended up doing maintenance on F-18 Classic Hornets. So I did that.
I'm sure everyone gets the same reaction there.
Yeah, the first time I walked into the hangar, I thought, "Oh man, like how lucky am I? They offered me a job here. Work on fast jets. It's one of the highlights of my career, working there. It's what I always wanted to do. After I worked out helicopters are old, slow, and that there was fast jets out there. I thought I'd made the wrong call joining the Army, but I finally got to work on the fast jets. So I did that for a couple of years. Also sort of started studying the safety WHS, and from there I got lucky enough to get a job in the Test and Evaluation Directorate, where they do all of their research testing as their aviation safety officer. So that role is sort of responsible for the airworthiness of all of their research aircraft. So that was it. That was kind of interesting. And that's probably my first, I'll say, interaction with drones. And I quite often say to people, like, when they ask my background, I said my first interaction with drones was thinking about it from an aviation safety officer perspective of a manned aircraft, and particularly fighter jets, because they're going to run into a drone before they can see it. My first feeling of drones was I wanted them all on the ground, or can I shoot them out of the sky, because they're a danger to my aircraft. That was my first thought about drones. But it made me research and have a look into drones and flying drones to get an understanding, of the other side and what risks we face to our aircraft. So that's where I didn't quite get into the drone industry, but at least I got an understanding of the drone industry from that. So
this kind of like sorry, Danny, go for it.
I was going to say, it's really good that you've actually you've seen both sides, from the manned aviation and the unmanned aviation. Like, it's just really cool to actually, live that essentially.
It brings a good skill set over as well. Having the manned coming into the unmanned world you definitely bring a lot of those skills over, and it makes your life a lot easier getting into the drone industry when you have all that knowledge. That's for sure.
Yeah, certainly. Having the aviation background, and then the airworthiness and flight understanding of manned aviation, and understanding, even just to the point of understanding maps. Like when you come in for a drone the first time, you're like, what is this map? Like, and how do I read this? I'd been reading, aviation charts and maps for, nearly 8 years before I even, picked up a drone to fly one first. So it sort of made it easy transition, and I can understand, what the implications are if you don't follow the rules.
So when you talked about obviously Army 11 years and then Air Force with, and then it's obviously the testing side of things. When was that when you started getting exposed to drones? What sort of time period? Is it like 2008, 2009 timeframe or?
No, it was a little bit later than that. It was about 2012 when I first started learning about drones. I didn't actually fly one until about 2015. And we actually did some quite interesting tests where I went off and got my drone license so I could fly with one of the Air Force F-18 Hornets flying above me. And what we were trying to ascertain was if I was flying a Phantom and he came flying over the top, would his radar pick it up? Could he find a Phantom flying around underneath him picking it up? So it was.
Are we able to talk about any of the results there, or is that classified?
I can say that in certain aspects they can pick it up, and that's pretty much all I can sort of tell you. I can't tell you the details.
I suppose the speed they're going, by the time they pick it up, they'd realistically be gone. They're a kilometre down the road already by then. Yeah. So, and he was actually looking for it as well, which is a massive difference. I mean, you don't fly a Hornet around looking for a drone generally. I can just picture it right now. It's like, so where it is there, it's gone.
I wouldn't have thought he had much time to do that by the time you said
Yeah. So it was a bit of a surreal moment. I must admit, when I'm standing on the ground and I've got a Phantom in the air and I'm looking up and you see a Hornet fly above you trying to track you. Yeah. It's a bit of a surreal moment.
And what was the reasoning for that sort of testing? Is that because drones are starting to sort of
why not
pop up and cause headaches for these guys, or?
Yeah, they were starting to cause headaches. There's a whole bunch of plane spotters out there, and because you can't get up close to a military jet, you can stand outside the fence and peer through the fence, and it's still a couple of k's away. People were starting to fly drones at the end of the runways, trying to capture them taking off.
So ballsy.
Yeah,
I think I know some stupid people, and I don't think I know anyone that's actually stupid enough to have a crack at doing that.
It's bad enough flying at the end of a runway, let alone
a military runway.
Yeah.
How much do you want to get locked up?
Yeah, pretty much. And they advertise, so they'll be talking on the radio, going, because they'll listen to the radio and go, "Oh, he's about to take off. I better take off." And you're like, "All right." So the interest was, can you pick up a drone off of the radar? For all manner of circumstances. Like I said, in certain circumstances you can, but not always.
So we were actually at Wings over Illawarra, I think, a couple of weekends now, and we saw the final, hurrah, public hurrah, I should say. Yeah, it's an amazing aircraft. So
it is amazing when you think how old it is as well.
Yeah.
How old are they?
31, I think.
Yeah, I think they're. Well, I think the US had them before us, so they're about 40 years old, I think, technology-wise. So.
All right. That's nuts.
No, pretty cool to be rocking up to work every day. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big perk to the job. That's for sure.
True. So it was a good time. So I didn't really. I mean, I flew drones very sporadically before I joined CSIRO. And for your listeners out there, if I say CSIRO, it's CSIRO because we're lazy. We don't spell it out. So I didn't really start to fly drones a lot until I joined CSIRO. It was more sporadically for testing and other sort of purposes whilst I was working with defence. It would have been nice to get into their drones, but I never got into that side of stuff.
Yeah, they're a bit bigger than Phantoms.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Be interesting, I guess, like more jumping forward a bit. The research and development side of stuff with the CSIRO and the drones is, I guess, what is some of the stuff that you actually look at and do with drones with the CSIRO?
So with CSIRO, most of our drone flying is essentially data collection. We do have one business unit which is called Data 61, and they actually do try to do a lot of software development for drones. Robotics drones are essentially tied into the same area. So they will develop a lot of software for drones, but the rest of it is mainly data acquisition. But when I say data acquisition, I make it sound boring. I mean, we've got people that are flying over cotton fields to determine, the size of a cotton field and the rate of growth, because they're trying to grow cotton in greenhouses that exhibit climate control in like 30 years' time, and how the cotton will grow there. So they're trying to ascertain it's flying over, the different growth rates. We've got guys that fly over the ocean, just trying to detect sharks, do nature conservation, and ranging from nature conservation, we've got people that trying to detect weeds in waterways and how to combat weeds in waterways. And then we've got guys who are trying to determine the size and health of crocodile eggs. And the use of drones in that is a highlight of mine for CSIRO, of the use of technology, because years ago they used to have two guys go out and have one guy on the ground trying to distract the crocodile while the other guy ran up to the nest to grab an egg, so they could measure it.
Yeah, I met some guys in North Queensland that used to do that, to go get eggs out of crocodile nests, and they had some interesting stories.
You just
certainly not a work hazard.
Yeah, who was writing the risk assessment for that?
Yeah, not me.
Do they just sit and
don't die?
Yeah. So it progressed to using a drone to fly over, capture, take pictures, capture, and then they would come back. And from all of the data that they'd previously collected from running up and grabbing an egg, they could now determine the size and very closely determine like the weight of the eggs. So there's where technology has stepped in. We don't have guys trying to steal crocodile eggs out of nests anymore.
Well, they're pretty much saving lives.
Sounds so much fun, though.
It sounds like were you asked to come into a room and explain the use case and you just fell over laughing, going, yeah, we can solve this one for you.
Yeah. It was like, well, pretty sure that you can do that with a drone. And they were like, what do you mean? Like, I want to see the egg. I'm like, you'll see the egg and you'll be safe.
You'll be safe.
Yeah. So, some of them just love the adrenaline rush, I think, of running up and, stealing a crocodile egg. But I just wouldn't like to be the guy whose job is to distract the crocodile to get the crocodile to look at you.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate knock and run.
Yeah.
Practice my whole childhood for this.
Yeah.
Got to be very confident in yourself to do that one. and quick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Are you able to talk us through sort of the workflow of doing a job like that? Because I'd imagine some of those areas would be quite remote. How do you, I guess I'm just trying to, my mind sort of going, how do you cater for batteries? How do you set up? Where do you set up? Are you beyond visual line of sight? Like, what are you guys doing? How are you doing it? What are you doing? All that sort of stuff.
So for that one, and the same when they're tracking the turtles, because it can be over a wide range. They're actually mainly launching and recovering from a small boat. So they're essentially just got a landing, either a small landing pad on the front of the boat, or their hand launch and recovery from a small boat. Just due to keeping a visual line of sight, they can track it, track the drone with the boat pretty much. Because crocodile nests, turtle nests, they move from year to year, so they're really the first part of it is trying to find them.
Because stone crocodile nests sometimes get pretty far away from the water and quite deep in the scrub. I know, talking to some people up in North Queensland when we were up there, that they quite often come across crocodile nests in the cane fields and stuff like that around their properties and things like that. So I imagine they weren't as simple to find.
No, they're not. They're not that simple to find. Data 61 once again trying to do software recognition, and so they can actually fly over, and because sometimes they'll actually fly over a nest and not even know it's there.
See it.
Until they do a walk along the ground and they're like, we didn't see that one there. Whereas if you can get software to identify it as you fly over, it's far simpler.
Do you use thermal at all for that purpose, or is it all RGB?
It's mainly RGB. They have used thermal. It's not always that efficient at finding the nest. They find a lot of particularly if it's not right on the water's edge, they tend to find a lot of small rodents and stuff with thermal imaging rather than the crocodile eggs or the turtle eggs. So
I'd say it might be hard to find something that's cold-blooded anyway.
Yeah, and that's the other. It doesn't give out a huge heat source, so it is difficult to find.
Yeah.
So RGB is actually easier to spot them.
Right.
Be onto it, I guess.
What are some of the other projects you can discuss? Other than people trying to hunt down crocodile eggs.
It's pretty cool,
which is a pretty cool.
Pretty damn cool.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. So we've got some of our oceanographers. We've got a research vessel called the RV Investigator, and they have been flying off of the RV Investigator down in Antarctica, which poses its own problems, obviously, down there, because the closer you get to Antarctica, the less GPS satellites that you can sort of pick up. So they have to be careful where and when they fly. If you're relying on GPS, it doesn't always come back to the same home point, even though the ship might not have moved. Return to home generally moves. Just due to the lack of signal down there, so that's an interesting challenge for them.
There'd be issues with the compass down there as well.
Yeah. So it's not too bad, but they have been known to throw erroneous readings from the compass.
Wow.
And also you get a little bit of interference, obviously, with the RV Investigator even if it's stationary, it's sort of still running with all of its experiments and stuff that they do on board. Can run interference as well. So, and not to mention a very large metal structure.
So I was just about to say, the good old-fashioned steel ship. In my experience, drones near ships don't generally survive too long.
No. So it's an interesting. I mean, I've not had the opportunity to go down there. I would jump at it if they ever offered me, but be an interesting trip down there on the Investigator, I would say.
That's definite.
So so we've got one of our Data 61 guys. He actually flies the Yamaha RMAX.
They're not easy to fly.
No, he's actually got a research one. So our RMAX is actually slightly modified to the original one. Just trying to do fully automated avionics software development on that. If you've ever flown an RMAX, you'll understand if you can get it to work on that, any drone, it'll work on any drone. So that's an interesting sort of, I guess, software development project that's in the pipeline. And from that, CSIRO are also just going to start doing an underwater drone program. So essentially submarines.
Yeah, underwater drones fascinate me a lot. I think they're pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
That was actually going to be one of my questions was, are you just doing sort of aerial drones, or obviously you're branching out into other types of drones? But you're doing, I have seen some ground-based stuff as well, but I don't know if that's part of you as from your section, but are you able to sort of talk about the other spaces you're playing in from a drone aspect, not just from an aerial perspective?
So we do have like the subterranean challenge where they've got vehicles going into mines, and we actually have one of our sites has a tunnel structure that they can go in and test, and they've currently got a little buggy that they can sort of send in, and it's actually got a drone sitting on the flatbed of the little trike that goes in. So the trike will go most of the way that they know, and then they send the drone off down chutes to sort of see what's there. We also have a whole bunch of extraterrestrial sort of robots. We've got one that is slightly terrifying. It's like a spider that is taller than I am.
Wow.
So it's only slightly terrifying if you see it walking. To the more friendly, meter long dog looking walking robots, they're a bit more friendly looking than the spiders.
So what's the spider setup for? What would that be? What are you guys using that for?
That one's actually trying to see, they can do stuff on a small scale. That one's not actually getting data so much. It's just does what works in a small scale work in a massive scale. And the reason why they sort of went with the spider option, 8 legs, is far more complex to sort of maneuver and get all the joints working, and to upscale that to if they did like one of the 4-legged dog ones, mind you, that would look a bit more cooler, I think, than a massive spider. It'd be more like a dinosaur than a spider. But so they're only really touching on that for upscaling, not so much.
Okay.
But if you could get one that could step higher ground, is the idea behind it. Is the upscale.
So you're more using it as a research side of things, testing ideas and concepts and things like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
I guess instead of using track, you're using the legs that kind of go through the different areas or terrain.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of just a straight track, so it can go up steps a lot more efficiently. And also, if you're sort of on tracks, you're limited to your motion, whereas these ones can actually turn on the spot and quite precisely turn to like 32 degrees and track that way. And also just the uneven terrain. If you've got a slope and you're on a track, well, you're going to start driving on the slope. Whereas these, will actually maintain your data collection sensor level.
Not gonna lie, I'm pretty much picturing the giant spider in Harry Potter running through the forest. It's kind of creeping me out a little bit.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's quite that fast, thankfully. But
as long as we can outrun it, that's all that matters.
It is still terrifying. The first time I walked into the large shed where they've got a whole bunch of their robots, and they kind of went, and here's like Data 61 and some of their projects, and you open the door and you're like, you should probably warn people there's a giant spider in here rather than just let us all walk in and be surprised.
Well, this is Australia. They expect you walk into the shed, there's going to be at least a spider in there.
Yeah. True. It's got nothing on a big huntsman that's the size of your hand. We can say that.
Yeah. So have you actually started with the underwater stuff, or is that still in development?
We have started a little bit, but we're going to start ramping it up. I think they've worked out that we actually have quite a few diving research scientists. So but diving is getting quite expensive in its own activity, and it also comes with its own health risks. If you're scuba diving, so there's many applications that you could use an underwater drone rather than send a person down. But it's the whole industry of underwater drone is lagging quite behind the aerial side of things, as in CASA with their regulations are fairly sort of up to date and coming on board more and more with the unmanned side of regulations. The maritime transport are still lagging behind and not understanding unmanned. They call them ROVs, so remote operated vehicles, to the point of if you put a ROV in the water, it is classed as a vessel, so the Maritime Authority state that you must have a life jacket on board, even though there's no people on board. It's a vessel, so you have to have a life jacket on board.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A lot of the ROVs currently have a life jacket still in the packet, all folded up and just tucked neatly in the shelf. Tick, we have a life jacket on board because that's a regulatory requirement. So the Maritime Authority have a bit of catching up to do with their regulations in regards to sort of unmanned submarines and ROVs.
Yeah,
that's just one example.
Yeah, I mean, I've only ever seen them kind of used, I guess, to go look at, sort of shipwrecks and stuff like that. And if my cousin's husband actually is involved in a lot of underwater construction, and I know they used underwater drones sometimes to sort of monitor what they're doing or monitor what's around them, and just sort of obviously look at the projects that they're doing. But it's interesting to see some of the other use cases that are out there for underwater drones, that's for sure.
Yeah, just even atmospheric testing of the water is something simple that a ROV could do. You don't need to send a person down to have a look and do some atmospheric testing. Even like going along the Great Barrier Reef, just send one down. The challenges are keeping control of it and keeping it on the track that you want it on, because you don't get GPS, obviously, and depending how deep you go. And they've actually got the opposite problem, I guess, to aerial drones, in the sense that they actually want the unmanned ones to go quite deep rather than shallow in the water, unlike aerial, where we stay quite low, under 400 feet, stay away from manned aircraft. They want the ROVs down low, so they're staying away from the ships and the boats. So it's similar, but subtle differences.
And I guess vision becomes an issue the further you go into water.
Yeah, exactly, and pressure.
So the pressure does affect them.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've ever seen those old movies with submarines, and they tie up the string across, and then all of a sudden it's got a big bow in it. Trying to make a small hand-sized ROV capable of withstanding that pressure it's got its own unique challenges.
Yeah. What are the sort of limitations on depth with them these days? Like, can they go like pretty crazy depths, or are they sort of limited to maybe 30, 60 meters or something like that?
Currently, they're quite limited. Like, I think that's where it will go eventually with not just CSIRO. I think across the broad spectrum, people will start using them more and more, which will only speed up the development of them and the capability of going deeper.
I was going to ask you about your fleet. Are there any specific drones that you kind of work with, or do you tend to sort of go, well, we'll build our own? What's sort of the mindset that CSIRO have?
Most of the drone fleet for CSIRO are off the shelf, bought, and DJI is like most prevalent. So Phantom 4s, M600s. I did mention that we go all the way up to the RMAX. So we've got guys flying tiny little micros right up to the 100 kilo RMAX. So it's quite a broad spectrum of aircraft, but 3/4 of our fleet would be Phantoms, Mavics, and M600s.
With the M600s, what kind of payloads would you be putting on the bottom of those? They're obviously custom payloads, but
yeah, generally the bigger Lidars.
Okay.
For the M600s, they're the main payload for the M600s. A lot of people, if they just want sort of images, will go a smaller drone. Like we've got quite a few. Well, we're getting more and more M300s now. Just they're easier to transport than the M600s. And if you can get away with an M300, it's far easier. So
a lot less battery.
Yeah, exactly. So the only issue is we've got a few European Ace Core drones now as well, due to the fact that particularly up north, when we fly close enough to some of the military bases, they have put a stipulation on the fact that we're not allowed to use a Chinese drone close to the military base. So hence why we had to start looking, well, who else can we use that we... And Ace Core are actually quite a good sort of substitute. They're very much like DJI, but not Chinese.
How many pilots do you have within the whole organisation?
Currently, we have 49 pilots, and we have 112 drones.
Wow!
Across the fleet, so it's quite large. It's not the largest by any stretch of the imagination, but it's quite large. And quite varied. So being the chief of my pilot, I love it because every now and then I'm surprised. I'm like, "You're doing what? The drone? Oh, well, we haven't done that before. Okay, so
should I be signing off on this or not?"
yeah. So
even with that many pilots, it's like say with the police or the fire brigade, there's only so many specific items and jobs they can do. You guys are doing so much more.
I'd never heard of Ace Core drones before, and I'm just literally had a quick look. They're actually a pretty cool looking drone.
Can we share the screen, Ty, so we can all
have a look? Sure. Where are we? So, for the listeners at home, I've just got the Ace Core Technologies website up with one of their models of drones, the Noah it's called. It looks very similar to an M300 style looking thing, but
long legs like the 600 carry larger payloads. Looks like your Spider, Amanda.
Maybe. It does. Well, when it's on the ground, it does look a little bit like the Spider. It's only got 4 legs, so not quite as scary. But yeah, they're a good piece of kit. The Ace Cores.
You touched on Lidar earlier. Have you got like a preferred Lidar payload that you guys tend to use?
I would say no. And the interesting part about CSIRO is we have so many researchers and doing so many different things, and their thought process are different. Part of my job is trying to get them to talk to each other to figure out what's best. Because you might get 6 people using Lidar, looking for very similar things, as in using a Lidar to look for weeds in a waterway is not a lot different to flying, say, over a cotton crop. Yet they use a completely different brand. Completely different size. So setting up a community of practice to sort of get them to talk. So no, we don't have a preferred one. It's up to the individual projects what they want to purchase, and generally it comes down to budget. What they can afford. So
maybe cut the project budget and start talking to each other.
Yeah. Well, even sharing, because quite a lot of our guys are seasonal flyers as well. Like, you might be looking for turtle eggs, and you might be trying to track turtle movements and growing cotton. Can generally be opposite seasons, but they don't seem to talk. They're very different projects. But part of my job is to try and get that sort of sharing ability without it being too onerous, and you don't want to start shipping lidars and drones around the country. But it's interesting that the people have the same setup and they've never talked to each other. And I'm like, don't talk to this guy, he's like an expert on this Lidar, he's had one for like 10 years. And they're like, oh, okay.
It's funny that. So do you guys, because I know CSIRO have in the past worked with other companies to develop their own LiDAR units. I know they were part of, I could be wrong, but GeoSlam. They're part of being GeoSlam in the UK, and I think maybe Emercent. I could be wrong. So do you guys get to sort of play around with the up-and-coming sort of technology internally, or are you sort of kept separate? How does that work?
We do collaborate with them, and we do get to play. Emercent, we actually collaborate with quite heavily due to the fact that the guys that started Emercent are all ex-CSIRO employees that wanted to start their own business. And so they left and had a startup, but just due to connections and natural, collaboration. And they also are working on one of our sites, so they can just walk down the hallway to talk to the CSIRO scientists, and vice versa. So the collaboration is quite high. Same as we have collaborations with quite a lot of the major universities. They're all, we're all trying to do the same thing, and if we can come together and have a chat, it generally speeds up the research and development sort of process. So collaboration is like I won't say a buzzword in CSIRO, but it's one of our favourite things to do. Because it's amazing, even just having a hallway chat over a coffee with somebody can help your project.
Yeah, definitely.
But talking to you might make it difficult for others. You'll be talking about so many different use cases of like, how does she keep up with all this stuff? So I'm sure you're probably privy to so many varying projects.
And like I said, that's part of what I enjoy about this job is, just getting your head around it initially. When I first took on the chief of my pilot role, and trying to get my head around all of the projects and what we do and how we're using drones, was like, oh, I'm never going to get this. We do so much stuff. But once you understand it and once you've talked to them, like I said, I'm now interested. I kind of see a job come in and go, oh, well, they're doing something different. So I'll sort of ring them up and have a chat and go, tell me what you're doing. Because one, I need to make sure that we're doing it legally and we're doing it safely. And I don't know what you're doing. So fill me in.
Please explain.
And they're generally just, expanding on an existing project that I might have known about, and I'm like, oh, okay, so you just want to do that. So it's what makes the job so enjoyable is the fact that we do a whole bunch of different stuff with it. I get a job in the morning where somebody goes, oh, I just want to go up and check if there's any leaves in the gutter of the building on the site here, to, I'm going to go and spray chemicals on our cotton field this afternoon with one of the MG1Ps. So it's kind of like, oh, well, this is varied is what you can get, really.
Yeah. So how, so obviously it's quite diverse with what you do and the drones that you have and everyone doing different things. What's your workflow look like from like registering or logging all your flight logs and things like that?
So we use AVCRM to sort of do all of our flight logging, and as the chief mate pilot of a large varied organisation, AVCRM is a godsend to me. It is like awesome software that I know when I'm going through a job that once they've submitted it and I've checked it, AVCRM makes me comfortable that we are compliant, and not just for the day-to-day flight stuff, even just recording defects and recording the maintenance side of things. AVCRM, like I said, I don't know how I would track it without AVCRM.
Imagine old school.
A lot of paper.
No.
Yeah.
We understand.
Instead of a lovely blank desk here, I'd have like thousands of folders.
Yeah.
Well, we all use it, so we understand the value.
We only jumped onto it this year, and I didn't know myself after not having all my little like booklets around with all my like logs and stuff in it, and so now it's all done, which is great.
Definitely does.
Even just checking, something's what might be simple, checking, the pilot currency. With AVCRM, it's like 2 clicks and I can go, this dude last flew 17 days ago. And you're like, oh, okay, sweet. Rather than try to flick through a log and go, what was the date and how many days ago was that? Like, and trying to use my fingers to add it all up.
Don't plug him too much. We're still trying to get him to sponsor us. So.
Right.
We do have a code though. What's the code again that people can listen to? Because we just gave them a good rap, so we want to make sure if people are listening and they're not using AVCRM, we sort of get a bit of.
We'll definitely have to put it in the caption for sure. I'll put it up on the screen somewhere.
I can't remember what it is, but it's good.
Yeah.
DW-50-off. That's what it is.
That's it. That's right. Yeah. And that gives you like 50% off for like 6 months or something. It's a pretty good deal. I can't remember.
For the year. Yeah. We'll say the year. It's Isaac's
We'll say the year. Isaac's
going to deal with that now.
Sorry, Isaac.
Not our problem. So.
I heard it 3 times, so it must be a year.
It must be, exactly.
Next minute, we're just going to get a call from Isaac.
Amanda told us it's a year, mate.
Can't blame us.
Obviously got quite a varied number of projects. How do you go about the compliance and legal side of things, the laws? What are some of the challenges that you've gone, I wish this is, we got a favorite. We won't tell you yet. We'd like to hear your one first. And are there any laws that you find that's constantly sort of, you wish you got to kind of lobby for that, or that sort of change, or?
I wouldn't say change, because I actually think that the laws are very well. There's a good grounding to the laws. So when I think change, I think maybe tweak. And I think
I love the word playing there.
I think the biggest one, the most of our guys holding most of our guys back, is having to get the IREX for beyond visual line of sight. They don't have time to go and study and to try and pass that. So, we, like I said, you're trying to look for crocodile eggs. You're trying to fly just even over a cotton field. The guys are landing, driving to the other end of the field. If they could do it beyond visual line of sight, would be far better. Even extended visual line of sight doesn't always work for them, because they don't always have enough people to actually get a team together to do extended visual line of sight. So beyond visual line of sight would be perfect, but the guys don't have time to go off and get an IREX. So that's the one that's probably holding us back. If there was a more drone centric exam that you could sit, would probably be one of the bigger ones.
So would you think of it as a way of doing it as an exam, or have it within your operation procedures and manuals, and you personally within the organisation are allowed to train the beyond visual line of sight section as part of your procedures and manuals?
I don't mind either way. I see the benefit of sitting an exam, potentially with an RTO. Hand on heart, at least I know that the people down the road that might be doing the same thing, their procedures are actually up to date if they have an exam and they have to pass and they have that basic knowledge. A smaller operation with just a chief remote pilot, is, whilst it's not as bad as a manned aviation collision, you don't want a drone collision and you get halfway through what you're doing and your drone gets taken out because you both think that you're okay. So I see that. I think with enough, I guess, framework around it, that having your own procedures and doing it internally would work best for CSIRO.
Yeah.
So I know I just sat on the fence there without saying either one. But I see the merit in it sort of having an exam. But for CSIRO and us as an organisation, being able to do it internally would be,
I think for organisation like yourselves or Life Saving New South Wales, what are they? What's their organisation?
The Queensland
New South Wales Surf.
That's New South Wales Surf. Yeah, Surf Life Saving. Someone with extensive amount of operators that it would take a lot of time to get them all trained up, do it right. I think it makes sense to be able to bring it internally and have your own sort of training dedicated to your niche field of whatever you guys are doing. So instead of sort of just adding a blanket rule, here's your rules and regulations, here's your exam, you can kind of cater it to your specific thing.
Yeah, exactly. And particularly for CSIRO, I would cater the training for what they're actually trying to do rather than have a blanket scenario. Because flying over the ocean would be far different to flying over a cotton field.
Yes.
So like I would tailor the training and obviously the procedures for their type of operation as well.
Do you tend to do that? Sorry, Amanda. Do you tend to do that now anyway? Like, I know you don't need to do it, but are you finding that you kind of need to go and help understand that a bit more and help them?
A little bit, not so much help them. When we do our REOC inductions, one of the first questions I ask them is, what are you going to be doing with your flying? So most of the induction and most of the training on the CSIRO procedures is all the same across the board. And then I will actually tailor and have some questions and have some scenarios for them at the end that would pertain to exactly sort of what they're doing. So once again, it's very different. The guys that are launching and recovering off of a small dinghy is very different to a dude standing on an oval launching. So they're the type of things that we go into specifics with our inductions, and so therefore it would make sense if you were doing extended visual line of sight training or beyond visual line of sight training. I would do the same thing. You would have your stock standard sort of package that would cover all of the basics, and then you would tailor it to whatever the project was doing.
Understand.
Yeah.
Where do you see the drone industry going? I mean, if we focus in the aerial drones, have you got a view of where you kind of see the next sort of 2 to 3 years?
2 to 3 years, I think if it hasn't already, it will explode. I think people are seeing more and more benefits of using a drone. And so the industry in itself will grow. That comes with benefits and challenges. So the more people are doing it, obviously you've got more drones in the air. You also, percentage-wise, have more chance of people not following the regulations if there's more people doing it. But you've also got challenges where, a little bit like I touched on before, you can learn off other people, and people will start using drones for different things that nobody's thought of using them for before. So you can learn different applications. Even just talking to a new drone pilot, like I brought up A-Score before, which is something that some people may never have seen or heard about them before. So the more people that do it, the more learning opportunities that you have. So I think it's a good thing. I also think, maybe not 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 years. Certainly, I think we're heading towards personal transport.
Yeah.
That's true. It's going to be exciting space. One of the reasons we obviously created the podcast was to help people coming into the industry to, like you've highlighted, understand more about the different use cases other than the basic aerial photography and video. What would you say to someone looking to come in? Where should they focus, or what type of advice would you give them?
I think if you're just starting, my best advice is most of it is for data collection. Doesn't matter what you're trying to do, whether it's taking a video, whether it's taking a still shot. The best advice I can give you is, before you get too excited on getting bigger cameras, putting a Lidar on, is master the basic of actually flying your drone. And understanding your drone's capabilities. I think a lot of people don't understand, just a drone capability and what their limits are well enough before they start to go and try to do some extra fancy stuff, like trying to film themselves riding through a forest or something. Understand your drone before you start doing that stuff would probably be my biggest advice.
Any specific drone?
Sorry?
Any specific drone that you would recommend starting out?
No, I would not so much a specific drone, maybe the size of a drone. Bigger is not always better, which I think some people struggle to think about. They think, I want a really big drone. But it depends what you want. The smaller the drone, the more nimble they are. And the more opportunities you've got. A big drone is actually, quite boring to fly once you've flown a few smaller ones. So I would say start smaller, learn the basics. You can always go bigger. You can always get a bigger camera if you need it, better Lidar, and then sort of work your way up. But so I wouldn't recommend a specific drone, but start small, work your way up.
Yeah. Bigger is always generally 90% of the time more expensive as well. So
true.
If you're starting out, your price entry is quite low. So yeah, I think DJI is probably a good way to go. Just get your hands on one, play around.
At least there's a lot of options now as well, whereas I know when I purchased my first drone, there wasn't heaps of options, and I just bought a Phantom and tried to do some interesting stuff with it on its first day. So,
yeah.
And I go back to learn the basics of flying, because if you get a bit bigger and you're getting bigger payloads, the payloads are generally far more expensive than the drone. So you need to look after your payload.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. And then all the other costs associated with owning really expensive kit is everything else. So it's it's people often forget about that aspect. It's cool, I've got the gear, but I don't have it insured, or I can't fly it because I don't have the license. So
yeah.
How far down the rabbit hole are you willing to go?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right on.
Awesome. Well, we've got a little bit of a surprise segment for you that we didn't tell you. So it's called 6 in 60. It's basically going to give you 60 seconds. We're going to ask you 6 questions. And it's the same questions that we ask everybody in each season. So we'll have to change it up for next season. So if it's a lot of pressure on you now, don't stress too much.
Yeah, just whatever comes to your mind. It's
Can't be that hard. It's only 60 seconds.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
It's
really tricky. Someone's got a timer?
Ready to go.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And count it in.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
What's your favorite drone?
Probably the M300.
Nice.
Cool. What's your favorite color?
Orange.
Orange. Okay. What's your favorite ice cream?
Have to be cookies and cream.
Cookies and cream. Cool. Favorite car?
Favorite car? I don't own one, but I'd love a Ferrari.
Okay. But moved away from the orange, or maybe an orange Ferrari, perhaps. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Okay.
Guys happy?
I'm happy.
And this is the most.
In case you didn't.
10 seconds
This
go.
is the most trickiest one. Your favorite host tonight?
Oh, I'd have to go Sean.
Oh,
yeah.
Now you're on
Default to the host. Yeah.
I think
Default to the
Sean's
host.
winning this now.
It's probably because
we were
the name
fine,
popped
yeah.
up.
No, it was actually, I did a very quick look and got scared with the 10-second warning. So I went, I need a one-syllable name. And
So Danny, you were going Danny and you had to change it. Yep.
Yeah. I'd change
Too many
it.
letters and ties.
Is that the key to us consistently winning, Sean? Because we're one syllable, just type Sean.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you're under time pressure, one syllable is all you got.
So yeah, pretty, as you know now, we're pretty in depth on the questions. So it's funny how the ice cream question gets everyone. It's like correction and colors. People get thrown off like, no, it's just orange. It's pretty cool. It's awesome.
Yeah. No,
I don't know why orange. I actually get asked why orange when people ask me, and I don't know why. I think it's just bright.
Certainly different, but it's cool. So
Valid reason.
awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you very much for your time, and we certainly appreciate the insight. And I'm sure we'll have you on sometime next year. And if you'd love to come back, we'd love to have you on again.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. It's been great. Thank you.
And we wish you all the best for Christmas and New Year, and have a safe one. And then we'll all chat to you in the new year.
Yes, thank you. Same to you guys. Cheers.
Enjoy your Christmas.
See you guys.
Cheers.